Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another one of my videos in Game of Thrones Season 8. So there are several theories out there as to whether or not Cersei would survive the events of the final season of Game of Thrones. But if she were to die, the biggest question would simply be, who would be the one to kill her? And on this video, I'll be venturing into the top theories out there on the topic, plus my predictions for Cersei in general. Now if you end up liking this video, then I definitely hope you do, make sure you drop me a much appreciated like, and while you're at it, you can always subscribe and enable notifications as well. So first off, let's talk Cersei and her baby. Lannisters in general do not really fare well on the Iron Throne. They think they do, or they will, but then again, the grass is always greener on the other side. You've got Joffrey and he was poisoned, and you've got Tommen and he pretty much ended his own life. And finally you've got Cersei, who will probably end up dead sooner or later, because there's a trend there. So the idea of her currently unborn child rising to take over the Iron Throne is pretty far-fetched in my opinion. Game of Thrones might be no ordinary story, one that has given good a run for its money and given evil a lot of leeway, but I most definitely don't think it would go as far as evil triumphing so powerfully at the very end. And besides that, we've got a bittersweet ending coming our way. Now the one person I could imagine possibly rising to power once Cersei is gone, if she ends up gone, could be Euron Greyjoy. Even though I don't really see that one happening. But hypothetically, if it did happen, it would only be because of one or both of the following reasons. Number one, he's her only remaining ally now that Jaime abandoned her, so he's gonna be close enough to her if and when she dies. And number two, she'll probably take him up on his marriage offer. Now just like there was a Sansa and Bran deleted scene on the finale of Season 7, there was another deleted scene involving Cersei. I'm not going to be discussing that one right now. I'm going to be holding on to it up until the end of this video and hit you with a spoiler alert before I do. That deleted scene in specific was kind of a major one. Its removal or deletion either means the showrunners are not going with that kind of arc or storyline anymore, or they just took it out to somehow use it on Season 8, and that's exactly why I'll hit you with that spoiler alert right before I come to discuss it in detail. Now while I'm not convinced Cersei will live to see the end of Season 8, let's move on to the no death for Cersei theory. Everyone's definitely noticed that look on Tyrion's face at the very end of the 7th season of Game of Thrones, and there are a whole bunch of possible reasons why he could have had that expression on his face right then and there. But one of these reasons, or you can call them theories or speculations, happens to be all about him betraying Daenerys in favor of Cersei. In this case, his deal with Cersei would be one out of fear for her unborn child, motivated by his feeling of guilt over the death of Myrcella and Dorne a couple of seasons back. Now while I would give this option no more than a 10% chance of happening, the chance does still exist. Now I do understand as well that there are interviews with Peter Dinklage and the director of the Season 7 finale, and the two of them seem to have speculated in those interviews that the look on his face was about nothing more than either him being in love with Dany or him being fearful of the consequences of her newly found relationship with Jon Snow. But the heart of the matter is, these are really nothing more than speculations. I'm not really sure if Peter Dinklage has gotten his scripts for Season 8 yet, but at the time he made these comments, he was yet to lay eyes on such scripts. So yes, they are nothing more than speculations. Now simply put, the theory here is all about Tyrion either securing Cersei victory out of his love for his nephew or niece-to-be, or securing her safe passage and guaranteeing she would live if she were to be defeated in the war to come. But as I just stated, Tyrion betraying Daenerys has a very low chance of occurrence in my opinion. That leaves us with the option of Cersei ending up dead, and who it is that would end up killing her, if that were to be the case of course. I can really think of a few options here. Jaime and Arya are on top of my list, but then there are others like Sansa and Daenerys. But finally, there's a crazy theory, one I'll be sharing with you at the very end of this video. But let's get started with ranking these 4 names. So on top of my list is Arya Stark. Now Arya's arc on the 7th season might have been a bit unpleasant for some viewers. I personally liked it, but I do not feel the need to object to other people's opinions. I am a bit biased though. I have always been a fan of Maisie Williams' acting and how she's been portraying the role since Season 1. But nonetheless, the death of Littlefinger could be how Arya ends up getting to Cersei. Littlefinger, while the least trustworthy person on the show, even by Cersei's standards, has been more loyal to Cersei than to anyone else. Now if I remember correctly, and I think I do here, the only harm he's brought her that she knows of over the course of 7 seasons was by threatening her with his knowledge of her children's true lineage. That was part of the infamous knowledge is power scene from the second season, and even then that didn't work well for him, with Cersei proving that power is actually power. Now the expectation, mine at least, out of the finale of season 7 was that both Arya and Sansa would handle Littlefinger in secret. That would have been followed by Arya taking his face and commanding the Knights of the Vale to make sure they did not abandon Sansa. But that of course wasn't the case, because the whole thing was handled in a manner that was more public than expected, with Sansa managing to turn everyone against him, including his very own knights. But that as well does not necessarily mean Arya would not take his face to use it when needed. And what better use to put Littlefinger's evil face to than to get close to Cersei and finally manage to strike her name off her vengeance list? I cannot think of any. It would also be pretty satisfying to see the young girl who had to see her father dragged to be executed in front of everyone, now all grown up, and exacting vengeance upon Cersei, the queen she's hated since the very first moment of the very first season. Now the second on my list is the very obvious choice of Jaime Lannister. When it comes to Jaime, it's actually a bit complicated. I personally have never seen the shame in being called the Kingslayer. Hell, I've worked my ass off for the titles of Kingslayer and Bane of the Fallen King in World of Warcraft. But seriously though, never saw the shame in Jaime having killed the king who was going crazy and willing to burn his people, destroying everything in sight. And the fact that people have teased Jaime with it is something I find akin to bullshit. Natural humans loving to twist good things to use them as insults. It is actually almost every single thing that Jaime did in his life beyond that point that he should be ashamed of. But anyway, what I'm thinking here is really simple. Jaime took his sweet ass time to realize he's in bed with the devil, and over the course of so many seasons he's been venturing down the road of this massive redemption arc, one that got him to where he is right now, as far away as possible from the woman that brings out the worst in him. And it would make relative sense that he will only grow less fond of her and less willing to accept who she is. The man after all did have a threshold for evil, and the bill for the things he did for love was massively growing to a point that would bankrupt him. But even if there were to be any residual feelings he has for her, he would probably end up losing them once and for all once she's married to Euron Greyjoy. If she marries him, of course. And I kind of expect she will, because her victory against her enemies after all is very much dependent on his help and support. But even if he did not end up hating her or losing his love for her, becoming the Kingslayer, or in this case the Queenslayer, to the woman he loves would be even more poetic. It would be as well very reflective of the kind of man he's become post his redemption arc. Now speaking of the next on my list, Daenerys would make a great third here. And in this case she would either kill Cersei with her own bare hands or just burn her with the help of one of her dragons. The thing is, Daenerys is not so far taking kindly to betrayal. Hell, she didn't take kindly to things that are far less on the scale of shit than betrayal. And knowing that Cersei has already betrayed her agreement with Daenerys, it would kind of make sense that she does take her down herself. However though, there are two things that are going to stand in her way over the course of the majority of the final season. First of all, her dragons will be otherwise occupied for what I assume is the majority of the season, fighting back the Night King. Secondly, and if my expectation is right, Dany will be pregnant come season 8 and throughout the majority of the season. He'll probably end up giving birth to Jon's son close to the end. And to make things even more poetic, I think Dany will possibly die shortly after childbirth, mirroring the death of Lyanna Stark. But that's just one of many options I'll be discussing later on my predictions of possible bittersweet endings video that I'm going to be uploading pretty soon. But the final contestant for Cersei Killer on my list happens to be Sansa. Now with Sansa, it's kind of complicated as well, and probably the one prediction I'll have to argue to death in the comments. So Sansa did choose to let her sister rid the world of the evils of Littlefinger. She never killed anyone herself or seemed interested in doing so, and that would kind of tempt me or you to think she would be the last person to think or decide to kill Cersei with her own hands. But with Cersei, and specifically Cersei, the case is kind of different. Cersei's been a major player in all the shitstorms she's been through. She did force her into writing that message to Robb, calling her father a traitor, asking him to bend the knee. Cersei was as well the reason Sansa was forced to stay in King's Landing, almost get raped, get beaten up, and humiliated repeatedly by Joffrey. So she basically has a lot to make Cersei pay for. Littlefinger might have done a shit ton of damage to the Starks, but he did not initiate the war against them. It was all Cersei from the very moment she stepped foot in Winterfell on the series premiere. Now, as promised, I'll be giving you a spoiler alert in a moment here. You can mute this video then and unmute it once the screen reads "End of spoilers." So here's your spoiler alert if you do not want to hear of that deleted scene I mentioned earlier. Now, along with a few other mostly trivial scenes, except for the one with Sansa and Bran, a scene has been deleted from either the 5th episode, the 6th, or the finale of the 7th season, in which Cersei wakes up in bed having bled in her sleep and lost her baby. Now, this could actually mean one of three things. They actually decided to make the whole miscarriage an off-screen thing for us to discover later on. Now, that way we would not realize she was tricking Tyrion into thinking she was pregnant or tricking Jaime into staying by her side by using the baby. The second could be possibly that the showrunners decided to shove the scene into the final season. Now, in this case, such an event would be used as part of her fuel to fight harder and possibly end up married to Euron Greyjoy now that Jaime is gone. But finally, there's the option that they just completely took the scenario off the table and are no more planning to go with it. Now, all three options are pretty viable, and I rank them in the very same order I mentioned them in, and in all cases, I do not expect the scene will make it to the Season 7 DVD or Blu-ray. But finally, here is the one crazy theory I mentioned earlier. What if Cersei actually ends up married to Euron Greyjoy? What if he were to be the one to kill her to take over the Iron Throne? I know it's kind of a bit crazy and out there, but forgive me if Euron Greyjoy hit you as the romantic type, or want to settle to start a family and live happily ever after, driving kids to school. So let me know in the comments what you think of this theory, and do let me know in the comments as well what you think Cersei's destiny will be on the final season of Game of Thrones. Do you think she will survive to the very end? Do you think she will die at the hands of any of the characters I mentioned, including possibly Euron? But until I see you next time, thank you all for watching, and have a perfect day.